Welcome to this class on the British government and devolution. Today we're going to talk about the Parliament in Scotland, the Assembly in Northern Ireland and the Assembly in Wales. And this is what you have on slide 1 of the PowerPoint on the government that is posted on Selena. Westminster, as you all know, is the Parliament in London, England. Holyrood is the Parliament in Scotland, Edinburgh. Stormont is the Assembly of Northern Ireland in Belfast, and Synod is the Assembly of Wales in Cardiff. I'm sure you remember what I told you in class, that Wales was annexed to England in the Middle Ages, and Scotland was, the Act of Union between Scotland and England was signed in 1707, and the Act of Union between Ireland and England was signed in 1800. One consequence of these acts of union or annexation was that the existing legislative and executive powers in these countries were actually dissolved, prorogued, and from then on, the four nations were to share the same executive and legislative in London, that is Westminster. But as you all know, these nations are very different. They were annexed or united for various reasons. They do have a common history, but they also have very strong differences in terms of culture, in terms of language, sometimes in terms of religion. And these differences started to become very visible. And a number of people were asking for some of the acknowledgement of their national identities. Well, if you have a look at slide 2, you will see, and this is something you know already, that in the UK there are 650 constituencies. Out of these 650 constituencies, as you can see, 533 are English constituencies, 59 are in Scotland, 40 in Wales, and 18 in Northern Ireland. As you know, constituencies are equal in size, which means equal in terms of number of people who vote. So the same number of people voting must return the same number of MPs to Parliament. And as a matter of fact, as England is the most peopled of the four nations, well, English people return more MPs to Parliament than the Scots or the Northern Irish or the Welsh do, which is fair in terms of number. But again, in terms of local differences, the question was raised whether that system was really fair. As well, laws passed in Westminster were to be applied everywhere alike, whereas these laws were passed by a majority of English MPs. And this is how nationalism started growing in the 20th century. In Wales, Scotland, and, well, in Ireland. The Irish question is very different. I shall devote a whole class on Northern Ireland in another video. But nationalism started, growing in the 20th century with the foundation of nationalist parties. So in order to sort of calm down the situation, the political situation, and to preserve the unity of the United Kingdom, it was decided to grant all nations some form of autonomy, political autonomy in terms of legislation and in terms of power. And this is actually what was implemented under the Labour government of Tony Blair in 1998. And this is what you have on slide 3. And this system of autonomy, partial autonomy granted to Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales, is called devolution. It means that a number of powers are being devolved to these nations. The Act of Parliament that provided for devolution in Northern Ireland is the famous Good Friday Agreement signed in 1998. The Act of Parliament that provided for devolution in Scotland is the Scotland Act 1998, and the Act of Parliament that provided for devolution in Wales is the Government of Wales Act 1998. So what does it consist in? Well, there is devolution. What does it consist in? That consisted in granting these nations a legislative and an executive. The legislative in Scotland, if you look at slide 1, is in Holyrood. This is the Parliament, and there's an executive. The head of the executive is the First Minister. It's not the Prime Minister, it's the First Minister. In Northern Ireland, Stormont is the place where it's the palace of the castle of Stormont is where you will find the Assembly of Northern Ireland. The executive is shared between the DUP, the Democratic Unionist Party, and the Republican Party, Sinn Féin. So there's a First Minister and a Deputy First Minister. Whereas in Senate, the Assembly, that is the name of the Assembly, there's also a First Minister. So the legislative and the executive have some autonomy on a number of matters. If you look at slide 5, you'll find the devolved matters for Scotland is of the three nations, Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales is the one that has the greatest number of devolved powers. So these devolved powers cover a number of fields, including health, education, local government, law and home affairs, the environment, sports and the arts, social security, taxation, etc. So these are the devolved matters in Scotland. So now, you may wonder if you go back to slide number 2, you see, well, 650 constituencies, 533 constituencies in England, 59 in Scotland, 14 in Wales, 18 in Northern Ireland. So it means that despite devolution, these nations, and despite autonomy on a number of topics, these nations still return MPs to Westminster, England, London. The reason why, despite this partial autonomy, they still return MPs is precisely because it is a partial autonomy. It's not, full independence. And not all powers have been devolved. There are still a number of what is called reserved powers, and this is what you have on slide 6. So on a number of questions, the Welsh, the Scots and the Northern Irish are not free. And these are the reserved powers: constitutional affairs, defence, foreign affairs, central economic policy, social security, and other immigration and drug control. On those particular matters, it is considered that debates and votes should be the affair of the whole nation, and not, should not be debated or voted locally, because these matters are definitely too important. These are matters that concern the whole nation. So this is the reason why there are still, Scottish, Northern Irish and Welsh MPs voting in Westminster. One aspect of devolution, and that is, for devolution to to comply with the very notion of autonomy, no English MPs should be allowed to vote and participate in debates in Scotland or in the Welsh Assembly or in the Northern Irish Assembly. This is autonomy. So the English are not supposed to interfere when in devolved matters in these nations. However, until 2015, and this is what you have on slide 11, until 2015, the Scots, the Northern Irish and the Welsh, who will return to Parliament in Westminster, would participate to debates and would vote on matters that were part of the devolved matters, and that concerned England only, which was clearly an anomaly. I mean, the English would not, vote in Scotland or Northern Ireland and the Welsh, whereas those people would vote in England on, questions dealing with the devolved matters. In 2000, that was clearly an anomaly, and there was further evidence of this in 2010 under the Labour government of Gordon Brown. This anomaly is known as the West Lothian question. So there is further evidence in 2010 when Gordon Brown's government wanted to increase the tuition fees, university fees, in England, which were already prohibitive. So a number of MPs would oppose the passing of this bill, and the government had the bill passed with the support of the Scottish Labour MPs. And the trick is that in Scotland, university is free. So the Scottish MPs supported a bill in favour of an increase in already prohibitive tuition fees in England, whereas in their own country, university is free. So you might imagine the scandal. So it was clear that the West Lothian question had to be tackled because there was definitely something wrong about the whole system. And this is what EVIL, that is English Vote for English Law, provided for. So there are still the Scottish, Northern Irish and Welsh MPs in Westminster, but they're not allowed to participate to debates and to vote on laws that concern England only. This is EVIL. And this is how the West Lothian question was settled. Thank you very much for your attention.